Alright, so as you guys can tell by the title, I'm going to be trying to kick off a new series here on the channel. So instead of just doing my third review of Gilgamesh, as he does have a rate up on the NA version of the game, I thought it'd be better to kind of actually look at Gilgamesh, see what he's got, understanding that pretty much most people probably know what this guy is packing, and instead of just being like, oh, here's what the guy does and explaining why it's good or bad, I'm actually going to ask the question of, has he fallen off, right? Because some people may be wondering, well, Gilgamesh fall off, what do you mean? Well, he is a year 1 servant, right, who has received 2 buffs, meaning not only is he really old, but they have given him some things to try to make him a little bit better. However, he got both of those buffs very early on in his life cycle as a servant, so they're not as crazy as some of the more modern buffs that other servants are getting. I mean, look at someone like Ku Alter or like Ilya. Both of them just got absolutely ludicrous buffs, and someone like Gilgamesh has not exactly been getting things on that same level, right? At least not for someone who is a year 1 and probably could use a little bit more help. So we're going to talk about that in today's video. Again, not saying he sucks right off rip, and if I do this for other servants in the future, if you guys like this and maybe have other servants you want me to do this for, leave those in the comments and everything. But it's merely just asking the question if he's fallen off, and this is kind of inspired by the fact that on stream a couple of days ago, we were talking about Gilgamesh and some other older servants and what they could use to actually make them better, right? Distinguishing like, well, they already have enough of this, they actually need more of that, right? So before we begin, if you have not already, make sure you leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel for daily FGO content. I mean, hey, I think this video is proof enough that I'm always trying to do new things over here on the channel to see what might be kind of fun to talk about. Also, I stream every weekday over on my Twitch. In fact, today, this should be going up on Friday. I think we're doing Dark Souls tonight. So if you want to see me kind of die a lot, then yeah, make sure you pull up for that. But usually we play FGO starting around at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So with that being said, let's just go ahead and dive right into this servant, right? And actually kind of talk about what I think Gilgamesh kind of needs, because I'll just go ahead and just say this at the very beginning. I think he has fallen off just a little bit. Now, one of the saving graces for Gilgamesh is definitely the guy's NP. He has a very just generically good NP. And when I say generically good, not saying that like everybody's got this, right? But it just does very basic things that are just universally good. Like, he has a buffed NP, so the damage scaling is higher. The fact that he also gives himself a fat NP damage buff does certainly help. And the fact that he has a special damage mod that pretty much hits like the majority of servants in the game, right? This is going to always mean that he's going to be capable of doing damage. Now, the problem though is that the rest of his kit has good stuff in there, but there's just not a lot going on, which is kind of the problem. Like, the attack buff here is very solid. His NP gain buff, extremely solid. And hey, even the battery that they added on as one of his first buffs was also really good. And he's got the star weight, which might be a little redundant because he's an archer and his natural star absorption is already really high, but this can let him fight for stars if he's around some casters, right, who also have very high natural star weight. And if we actually look at his damage, he's right up there with all of the AoE archers in the entirety of the game. So it's not just even amongst Buster archers. He's good when it just comes into the question of AoE archers in general, right? So what I think Gilgamesh actually needs, if they want to kind of push him a little bit, is not any more damage, right? Like, you'll see some people saying like, well, maybe he should get like a Buster buff or something, right? Like something along those lines that would allow him to like triple buff himself. It would buff the damage of his Buster cards, help out the Buster crits. The problem is, I don't think that's very likely, because as we're seeing right here, that doesn't really do anything new for him, and his damage is already really good as is, considering that, again, this is without his damage mod, this is with his damage mod, and he's already this high, right? I don't think damage, at least focusing on his NP damage, is really the question here. There's a few things that I think they could actually give Gil to really help him out and make him a little bit more of a modern servant. For one, I think something that is heavily slept on is the fact that maybe on this skill, if you want to slap it on skill 2, you also give him just a big fat star drop rate buff, right? Because Gil notoriously has extremely high hits on all of his cards. I mean, look at that 5/5/5 8-hit extra attack. I mean, for my favorite Fate servant of all time, I couldn't ask for anything better than my boy having an 8-hit extra attack. But he's got these notoriously high hits. Why are we like not taking advantage of this, right? The NP gain is very good because it does kind of fix up his very low natural NP gain, and it allows him to gen a lot of his NP back whenever he does crits, especially now that, you could draw the stars to himself, got the battery to help out as well. But something like that would also help him fill more of like a star gen type role, which he could probably do very well depending on how much crit star gen they give him. Now, if they give him 50% to match up with the NP gain right here, that would be kind of cool and everything, but keep in mind that a 50% NP gain buff is not natural. Usually you're seeing a servant give themselves like 20 to 30%, not a whole chunkin' 50%. So I actually think it wouldn't be absurd for them to give him a 100% crit star drop rate for 3 turns as well. I mean, we already have the caster version of himself doing that for the entire party. Not far-fetched, if you want to try to make some like weird lore arguments, right? For him to at least be able to give that to himself. I think something like that could help him out a lot. And while some people might not think it's as flashy as some of these other buffs, I think it actually really does play into one of Gil's stronger aspects that's not being taken advantage of, and that is his actual, card hits, right? His card hits are so insane. The other thing is that instead of giving him a buster buff to just kind of buff up the damage of his buster cards and also buff up his NP damage a little bit more, well, let's not even lie, it would buff it up a lot more, because then if he's fighting a servant, he has all 4 buff types. If you don't know the different buff types in FGO, those being an attack buff, an NP damage buff, a card buff, and a special damage buff, are all 4 different types of buffs you can give yourself, and they multiply into each other, right? That's why you don't want to have a servant that like just stacks a lot of attack, or they stack a lot of card buffs, right? Because then you're not really getting that multiplicative damage that can really explode the amount of damage that servant is able to do. What I think might be a little bit better, especially for going down the line of maybe allowing Gil to take this more star gen role, is maybe somewhere on like his first skill or something, we slap on a crit damage buff, or even we could drop it in with the second skill, right? I could definitely see that also being a thing as well. I don't think they'll give him a 100% crit damage buff. If they did, that'd make him absolutely nutty, but I think just like 50% crit damage for 3 turns, that's perfectly fair. That's pretty much kind of like a standard crit buff that he could get. And that would help him out a lot, because then it's not just buffing his damage like some people kind of want him to get to compete with newer servants, but I think it actually balances out the damage in a correct way, right? I think trying to go into the route of just raw making his NP do more damage is completely wrong, right? Because he already does a lot of damage, right? Who cares about him getting more damage on his NP? The Buster buff would also help the damage for his Buster cards, but the crit buff would help all of his cards, right? It would elevate his damage a lot more than just being able to do big fat damage with his NP, and it would really make the crits that he's able to do just bite a whole lot harder. The only other thing that I could really think of that would really benefit Gilgamesh would be some type of survivability. And I think a lot of people kind of acknowledge that he's got like literally every noble phantasm, and if you've read the Fate Stay Night visual novel, the guy's armor is insane. I mean, he literally catches Excalibur with his bare hand, and I believe he takes an attack from his own Enema Elish being reflected back at him with the armor on. Like, the armor is notoriously really beefy, but my man's got no survivability at all whatsoever. It doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So I think, you throw an invincibility his way, or even just high hits of damage cut, like maybe 3 hits of 100% damage cut, very similarly to what, say, Galatea has. I think that could actually be a very good thing for him to get. That would also make sense in lore. Like, maybe he's not invincible, he's not like just outright taking no damage, but it's the fact that like his armor is so quote-unquote strong that he's able to use it, right? You could maybe even try to do something cute, right? And you could say that maybe his first skill, if we want to kind of play around with his ascensions like we do with Melusine, you could maybe say that for his first and second ascension where he's wearing the armor, that he gets that like 3 hits of 100% damage cut. Or if you actually go with his third ascension, then you could actually give him that Buster buff and he does a lot more damage, right? Because that's, Gil kind of fighting at full power if you look at his different ascensions and whatnot. But that's kind of the idea and some of the notes that I had to go over talking about Gilgamesh. I'm really curious to see what you guys think in the comments down below, because a series like this is something that I've been wanting to do for a while. It allows me to do more discussion-based FGO content, and I really just like discussing the game. That's why I really like streaming every weekday, right? Because it's super fun to kind of like pick each other's brains and kind of think about what they could do to kind of like fix some of these servants. Because will they do anything that I've just mentioned? Who knows, dude? Lasengel, DW, they both are completely out there, right? It's kind of hard to ever gauge what they're going to do. Some servants that really need a lot of help just get like, they lower the enemy's like critical attack chance or whatever. And like that didn't really help. And then the most random servants get like buffs you wouldn't even think is possible, like Ilya getting a 50% battery. Like I didn't think they were just going to be handing stuff like that out. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you have other ideas or other servants you want to see me do in particular, I will definitely go ahead and cover them because I love doing discussion-based content like this. I used to try to do this in the past, and I'm kind of revamping an old series. I used to do this with like Jean and Hijikata. I think I also did a video for Gilgamesh in the past as well. It's just now that he's on Raid Up, kind of flushed the idea back to my mind again. So I'm going to kind of soft relaunch the series under a new name and see if you guys are down for it. But let me know all that in the comments down below. Don't forget to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in the video tomorrow. Peace. Late, guys.